It's wrong to teach kids about what being gay is. It's wrong to teach kids about gender. I'm actually going to break this down professionally instead of being frustrated. 1, if there is somebody wearing a wedding ring, that tells them a little bit about sexuality. If a female teacher says, I have a husband, that says a little bit about sexuality. If a female teacher can say, I have a husband or boyfriend, a male teacher can say, I have a husband or boyfriend. Cinderella falling in love with the prince teaches about sexuality. Sleeping Beauty, who gets kissed by a prince while asleep, teaches about sexuality and a lack of consent. I'll also go on to say kids understand gender very early. Kids understand that in our society, certain things usually are for boys and certain things are usually for girls, even though they don't know the reason why. Girls tend to dress this way, boys tend to dress this way. You don't need to give them full gender presentations. In fact, as a learning specialist who specializes in language processing disorders, ADHD and autism, it's not my job at all to teach my students about gender, sexuality, any of that really. Unless I'm hired specifically as a life coach for a kid like that. But again, kids are constantly understanding sexuality, gender, and overall relationships between people. It should never be in an explicit way that is inappropriate. And it should be holistic. It shouldn't be coming from one person. And it shouldn't be coming at a level that is inappropriate or hard for a kid to cognitively manage. That could lead to trauma, worse. But the idea that you think, oh, well, kids can never understand and can never be introduced what gay is or what non-binary is, that's simply not the case. It does not need to happen right away. If a kid comes up to me and asks me, are you a boy or a girl? I am going to say a boy. But there's a huge difference between something not being my job and then something being inappropriate. Children need to understand that there are boys and girls as categories before you can add a third category that defies that category. You need to understand the binary before you can introduce non-binary. You need to understand the normal heteronormative relationship that we see on planet Earth before understanding the alternate relationship. Heterosexuality is not always the case. Sometimes it's homosexuality. And this knowledge comes with time and should actually be a majority of the parents and family members and people that the kid feels very, very safe with. And only a teacher should intervene in these situations if there is explicit consent from the parents or they're being hired to do so. But therapists, psychologists, social emotional learning specialists like me. But again, there's a huge difference between me just simply not doing something and something not being appropriate. Of course, there are certain aspects of sexuality and gender that do not need to be discussed with kids. Kids do not need to know the details of how sexuality works, or how gender expression like binders or tucking works. Completely inappropriate for a kid to understand, at least initially. But just careful about holistic generalizations like this is too inappropriate for kids, holistically, because it oversimplifies fairly complex situations. I hope this helps.